will not be running for president in 2020, but I guarantee I will stay in the fight for the hardworking folks across this country who've gotten the short end of the stick over and over. That's been the fight of my life, and it will continue to be so.
Another one bites the dust. Elizabeth Warren drops out of the Democratic race after a poor showing on Super Tuesday. Now many are wondering, will she endorse Biden or Sanders?
What guidance would you give to your supporters who don't know who to support now?
Well, let's take a deep breath and spend a little time on that. We don't have to decide that this minute.
Coast Guard choppers deliver much-needed test kits to a cruise ship 50 miles off California. This as cases of COVID-19 double in New York and Washington state. Disease investigators are now retracing patients' steps as the death toll continues to rise and ripple effects continue to grow. The stock market took a dive once again. Major companies are telling workers to stay home, and nearly 300 million children worldwide are missing school because of the outbreak. And what do you do when you're canceled?
For people that think because cancel culture lives online, that it doesn't have any real life impacts, what do you have to say to that?
That is completely false. It absolutely does have real life implications, especially for the person that is going through it, the person that's canceled.
Tonight, our in-depth look at cancel culture, what 3 people did wrong and their road to redemption. As many ask, what's worse, their actions or the response that followed? Good evening, I'm Diane Macedo in for Lindsay Davis. Thanks for streaming with us. We have a lot to get to tonight, but the big story is the spread of coronavirus here in the U.S. Right now, there are at least 162 confirmed cases of COVID-19 across 18 states. 12 people have died, and there's some serious concern regarding clusters of cases on the West Coast. And the cruise ship that's currently idling off the coast of California is closely watched. 3,500 people on board are being forced to stay put as a handful exhibit flu-like symptoms. The CDC is working with the Coast Guard to deliver test kits to everyone on board via helicopter. A senior Homeland Security official calls the cruise ship a, quote, viral disaster. And parts of Washington state are now looking like a ghost town, with many Seattle residents working from home amid the outbreak. This as an assisted living facility in the area reports yet another death. We will have more on many ways you can protect yourself and your family during an outbreak, plus the options you may have if you have to leave work and self-quarantine. But first, our Matt Gutman leads us off from California on this growing crisis.
100 miles off the coast of California, a pair of National Guard choppers today hovering over the deck of the Grand Princess cruise ship, dropping kits to test dozens of passengers potentially infected with the novel coronavirus. Just hours ago, passengers telling us all 2,400 of them are now ordered to confine themselves to their rooms.
The CDC has recommended that guests should remain in their staterooms for the remainder of the cruise.
It comes just a day after the state's first death was linked to the ship. Officials say the 71-year-old passenger had symptoms before getting off the ship 2 weeks ago. Yesterday morning, this notice slipped under the doors of passengers like Debbie Loftus, who is traveling with her parents, who are in their 80s.
We're just a little bit alarmed. If we've been exposed, we've been exposed, and there's not much we can do about it.
62 passengers from that earlier cruise remained on the ship for a second consecutive cruise, and some are showing symptoms. The cruise line says all are being tested.
The longer we're kept in this confined space, the more likely we're going to catch the virus, just because there's nowhere else for us to go.
The Grand Princess operated by the same company that ran the Diamond Princess cruise ship, where 700 of the 3,700 on board were infected off Japan. Thousands quarantined on the ship for weeks. In Washington state today, where the virus has killed 11 people, the governor declaring a state of emergency. The number of cases jumping from 39 to 70 in just a single day.
This is a period of substantial anxiety in our state. It's real, it's significant, and we need to recognize it.
In Seattle, dozens of schools are closed. Millions of residents urged to work from home, including employees at Facebook, Amazon, and Google. Pike Place Market, usually packed with tourists, today a ghost town. For days outside the Life Care nursing home where 6 residents have died, families have been begging for answers about their loved ones. People like Pat Herricks, whose mother lived there.
I got a phone call this morning that she passed at 3:30 in the morning. She wasn't sick. She'd been really well. as far as we knew, she wasn't sick.
And Matt Gutman joins us now from San Francisco. Matt, you mentioned the Diamond Princess cruise ship. We saw how quickly the virus spread when that ship was quarantined near Japan. Are there concerns that will happen all over again on this ship?
And the one thing that's universal here, Diane, is that there are a lot of concerns. So the virus could spread on this ship like it has elsewhere. They could try to bring it ashore, offload the healthy passengers, but that might spread the virus around California, or they may take it wherever they're going. There is concern from a Department of Homeland Security official that if a lot of sick people are offloaded here, it could overwhelm the local health care facilities here in San Francisco or Northern California. There is no right answer. What we do know is that those test kits in the next few hours or so are going to be flown off of that ship. They're going to be tested here in the Bay Area in 2 separate labs. And once those results come in, about 300 kits were sent out to the ship. Once those results come in, only then will the CDC and local California officials make a decision about what to do with that ship. But right now, given the fact that all of those 2,422 passengers are told to stay in their rooms, take their meals in their rooms, not really go outside. I mean, this is effectively, no one's using that word, but what we're seeing already is a quarantine. Diane.
All right, Matt Gutman in San Francisco for us tonight. Thanks, Matt. Turning now to cases on the East Coast, more school closures have been announced related to just one man who infected his family and others close to him. Now there's growing concern he may have spread COVID-19 much further, having commuted in and out of New York City's busy Grand Central Station. Meanwhile, 2 cases in New Hampshire are raising questions about the potential spread among a college campus community. Our Whit Johnson has the latest on these cases, as well as the effect on air travel. Whit?
Tonight, the number of coronavirus cases doubling in New York to at least 22, most linked to a lawyer who frequently commuted out of Grand Central Terminal, one of the busiest train stations in the country.
The community spread dynamic is unpredictable and worrisome, so we're watching carefully.
His case causing a remarkable ripple effect. Health officials saying he spread the virus to his wife, their 2 children, another family, and a neighbor, who all went on to infect others. At least 18 people in all, traced back to one man. The city now reporting more than 2,700 people ordered to self-quarantine. Gillian Steinberg is one of them.
Ideally, we'll be back in school next week.
She teaches English at SAR Academy in the Bronx, where one of the lawyer's children attends school. It's now shut down. What is your biggest concern now as this outbreak spreads?
I think that there are vulnerable populations who genuinely have to be worried for their physical health, but I think that we just have to be careful not to overreact.
Tonight, Mayor de Blasio telling any New Yorker who recently returned from 5 hard-hit countries to immediately self-quarantine. Governor Cuomo activating a statewide emergency operations center in Albany and 2 outposts in Westchester County.
What is going to happen is the number will continue to go up. It must, because we are continuing to test more and more.
And now a healthcare worker in New Jersey testing positive. A man in his 30s recovering in the hospital, one of 2 cases in the Garden State. With the virus spreading around the world, people now asking serious questions about whether it's safe to fly. Major airlines waiving fees and canceling domestic flights. Delta and Alaska Airlines disinfecting and scrubbing down planes, especially those high-touch surfaces.
And Whit Johnson joins us now from New York City, outside that hospital where the patient is recovering. Whit, what's the latest on the city's response?
Diane, the health commissioner is now ordering all teachers, first responders, and medical workers employed by the city of New York to be tested for the virus if they show any symptoms at all, and there will be consequences if they don't comply.
Speaking of health workers, are we learning any more about that confirmed case near Dartmouth?
Well, Diane, we know that they are now monitoring students in the area. This all traces back to the initial patient from the state of New Hampshire. This was a health worker at the Dartmouth College Medical Center who tested positive for COVID-19. He was ordered to go on quarantine, but instead, during that incubation period, went out to some kind of event with dozens of people. Health officials there are now saying it's possible he infected another person who later tested positive. So this is what we're seeing with with the continuing spread, and health officials again are warning those who are on quarantine to follow the guidelines to prevent others from being infected. Diane.
Definitely raises concerns. Whit Johnson with us from New York. Whit, thank you. And as the number of coronavirus cases ticks up, so does the number of people in quarantine. But how effective are these quarantines? Harvard epidemiologist Dr. Eric Feigelding joins us now to talk about that. Doctor, thanks for being with us.
Happy to be here.
So we saw it today, as we just heard from Whit. I mean, this Dartmouth situation sounds almost like a facepalm moment. You've got a health worker who showed signs of coronavirus, was told not to have contact with other people, and ends up going to this event. So do these quarantines, self-quarantines, really work?
Well, self-quarantines only work if they abide by them. And that's the nature of it. Oftentimes it's voluntary, or there's no real enforcement around them. And the cornerstone of public health epidemiology is containment and before mitigation. And right now, until we have vaccines or anything like that, we have to isolate and quarantine. It is our main countermeasure, separate of basically self-isolation. This is what we have to do in terms of making sure this epidemic does not spread any further.
Given it's cold and flu season, it must be pretty easy to just attribute any symptoms to that. So are there unique symptoms to coronavirus that people should look out for?
It's not as unique as initially. The cough, the fever, the cold, the chest congestion is quite common. But as it develops, the pneumonia gets more severe, and I think at the core, it shares so many flu symptoms, and this is why the only way to differentiate is to test. But that availability is not everywhere, unfortunately.
Well, and if everybody goes to the emergency room, I imagine there's worries about contamination. So what do you do if you feel these symptoms?
Yeah, so some places are implementing something called like a fever clinic, or a clinic just for people with fevers to come in. It's like a special kind of urgent care. Toronto had them, and many other places had them during the previous epidemic. But I think the best way is to first contact ahead of time, so that when you do show up, or that they can tell you, here's where you should go, and so that doctors and nurses are protected whenever you arrive. Because we have too many healthcare workers and first responders like firefighters being quarantined and put out of commission for half a month because they were in contact with someone who later tested positive. And we can't have half of our healthcare system being shut down because of quarantine.
So is there anything else you can do to try to protect these healthcare professionals, these first responders, other than sort of calling ahead to the doctor's office and giving them a heads up?
I think this is the nature of. There's different blood tests now available via Quest and LabCorp. There's different ways that your doctor can order these tests, that maybe you can directly get these tests without going through the traditional hospital process. But right now, the capacity is so limited, and even though the CDC has relaxed these guidelines, many states are not abiding by them because the testing capacity is so limited. But I think there are more options in the horizon.
All right, at least that's a bright spot in there. Dr. Eric Feigelding from Harvard, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And of course, we all want to take precautions and avoid catching COVID-19, but working from home is not an option for everyone. Johnny Clayton Taylor, the CEO of the Society for Human Resource Management, is here with more on what workers and businesses can do to protect themselves. Johnny, we appreciate you being on. You know, you just heard the doctor there talking about the challenge of protecting healthcare workers. If you're someone who's generally forced to be exposed to the sick or the public, what do you do?
You stay home. I mean, the answer is really simple. At the end of the day, people should not come to work and run the risk of either taking diseases back to their families or bringing the diseases from their homes into the workplace. It's a really simple decision.
But not everybody can do that. What if you don't have the kind of job that you can do from home, or that you can't really miss? I mean, what if you're a doctor? You need to go in and treat your patients, for example.
Well, I mean, let's think about it. You're a doctor and you need to treat your patients. The one thing you shouldn't be doing is bringing harm to your patients. So I don't think that anyone should think about being unable to go to work. These conversations, if you are exhibiting symptoms of the coronavirus, then you must. It is your responsibility to not subject other people and expose them to this disease.
Oh, right. So you're saying for people who are sick, they should absolutely not go to work. Totally understood.
That's right.
What about
Yes.
for people who aren't sick and just want to take precautions. They want to protect themselves, but they can't just stay home and put themselves in, a self-preservational quarantine, so to speak.
Well, right. So obviously, as an organization, SHRM, we represent 300,000 HR people. So our job is to make sure that America's companies, and indeed globally, companies have employees showing up where they can do so safely and responsibly. So what we say is practice good hygiene. Nothing replaces that, and frankly, we should be doing that anyway. Avoid some of the normal gestures where we shake hands with people, a fist bump, a nod, just recognizing people in different ways. Avoid embracing people in a very safe way, right? Embracing people. The notion is be smart. We're dealing with an exceptional situation, and so that requires that you modify your behavior to take into consideration what we're facing and what we don't know.
And from a business perspective, what responsibility do employers have? For example, hourly employees who don't get compensated if they don't come in. Are there sort of any efforts to try to motivate people to stay home?
Well, so we are more than motivating. We're strongly encouraging employers to be smart here. It is simply not in the best interest of the employer to bring people into the workplace who pose risk. The idea, I had someone call me the other day and they were talking about, I operate a business and I make $10 an hour, and my employer has essentially said, if you don't come to work, you're not paid. And I said, well, that's dumb. At the end of the day, there's no other way to explain it. If, for example, you're a restaurant and you encourage someone to come to work so that you're not paying someone $10 an hour to be at home sick. Think about the consequences of that. So we're encouraging employers that if an employee is in fact sick or ever shows any symptoms that feel like, as the doctor said earlier, they look and feel like the flu early on. If you have that going on, ask, encourage, demand that employee stay home.
All right, Johnny Clayton from the Society for Human Resource Management. We appreciate it, Johnny. Thanks.
Thank you.
And now let's head over to the race for the White House. One-time frontrunner Elizabeth Warren ended her campaign today, calling the race the honor of a lifetime. But she is keeping us in suspense, saying she's not ready to make an endorsement just yet. ABC senior congressional correspondent Mary Bruce is in Washington.
Closing out her campaign, Elizabeth Warren today spoke her mind, but revealed very little about whether she'll endorse one of her rivals.
Not today. Not today. I need some space around this and want to take a little time to think a little more.
Progressives are urging her to back Bernie Sanders, but Warren made clear she and her supporters won't be boxed in.
I was told at the beginning of this whole undertaking that there are two lanes. A progressive lane that Bernie Sanders is the incumbent for, and a moderate lane that Joe Biden is the incumbent for. And there's no room for anyone else in this. I thought that wasn't right, but evidently I was wrong.
Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders are both now courting her supporters.
And today I would simply say to her supporters out there, of whom there are millions, we are opening the door to you. We'd love you to come on board.
Sanders spoke to Warren today, and so did Biden, who's now racking up endorsements. Hillary Clinton hasn't made it official, but she's sounding close.
I think people know he is a deeply decent person. He is a kind person. He doesn't take cheap shots at people. He doesn't insult people as a way of, trying to put people down and lift himself up. He is such the opposite of what we currently have in the White House that I really think a lot of people, had a chance to think about it.
With Warren's exit, it's now a two-man race. Warren today recalling all those pinky promises she made to little girls.
One of the hardest parts of this is all those pinky promises and all those little girls who are going to have to wait 4 more years. That's going to be hard.
And she was asked what role gender played in this campaign.
Gender in this race, that is the trap question for every woman. If you say, yeah, there was sexism in this race, everyone says whiner. And if you say, no, there was no sexism, about a bazillion women think, what planet do you live on? I promise you this, I will have a lot more to say on that subject later on.
And Mary Bruce joins us now from Washington. Mary, Warren's big thing was that she had a plan for everything. So what's her plan now?
Well, she essentially has two immediate options. She could endorse Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden. She, of course, is getting a fair amount of pressure from progressives for her to back Bernie Sanders, but it simply is not a given. Even though Elizabeth Warren, of course, is the other progressive in this race, it's not a given that her supporters will naturally go to back Bernie Sanders. In fact, we've talked with some Warren supporters who say that given Joe Biden's momentum, his support among the African-American voters, that they would actually prefer Joe Biden. Now, there's a third option, which is that simply she could endorse neither one of them. She could wait and make a decision later once it's clear who the nominee will be. The one thing that is clear is that right now she's holding her cards close to the vest.
That's for sure. And Mary, late today, Michael Bloomberg announced some plans of his own. How's he hoping to help the Democrats?
Well, everyone has been wondering, he's already spent $500 million on his own campaign. Now that that is in the rearview mirror, he has said he plans to support Joe Biden going forward. But how exactly is he going to do that? How is he going to spend his vast amount of resources? And now we know he's starting a new group. It's an independent expenditure group that would allow him essentially to funnel those funds to help get Joe Biden elected and also to help continue to hammer President Trump on the airwaves.
I'm sure Biden is happy to have the help. Mary Bruce, thank you. For more on the state of the race and Warren dropping out, let's bring in ABC News Deputy Political Director Mary Alice Parks. Mary Alice, where do Warren's supporters go from here?
Well, it probably depends on just how old they are. We've seen the data show a huge divide in this race over age. Bernie Sanders winning by leaps and bounds with the youth vote and really struggling with older voters. Totally the flip side for Joe Biden. My guess is that her supporters really split between the two of them, largely based on age and based on some political ideology.
Now, this campaign started off with a pretty diverse field. Now the two frontrunners are two white men over 75. How largely will diversity factor into their VP picks?
Oh, I think it's a must for them. I do not think that a Democratic candidate in this race can have another white man on the ticket. I think they're feeling a ton of pressure to name a woman of color, to add some diversity to the ticket. I think it's really possible Elizabeth Warren waited to endorse for exactly that reason. For all we know, she could be actively negotiating to be a VP pick for either of those two men remaining. But other candidates that have been in the race, Amy Klobuchar, Kamala Harris, have had a lot of VP buzz around them, too.
All right, and as we look ahead to mini Super Tuesday next week, 7 states are voting. What does the Sanders campaign need to do to regain momentum?
Look, I think that Michigan is the ball game at this point. It was the state that famously kept his campaign alive in 2016, and it really tells a story of the general election. Hillary Clinton lost that state, even though a lot of Democrats thought it was a part of a blue wall. So if he can go in and win in Michigan, it will really boost his argument that he is the most electable candidate in the general election. But if he can't, it will be another big blow to him.
All right, Mary Alice Parks for us in Washington. Thank you, Mary Alice.
Thank you.
And now to an update on a story we've been covering closely on this show. In a statement, Senator Amy Klobuchar says she met with the family of Mayan Burrell, who blames her in part for his murder conviction. The meeting, she says, took place one day after she dropped out of the Democratic race. Mayan Burrell was convicted for the murder of 11-year-old Taisha Edwards. You might recall Lindsay recently traveled to a Minnesota prison and interviewed Burrell. Klobuchar was county attorney when he was first tried and convicted. That first case was overturned, but he was convicted in a second trial. It was a case that she did not oversee, but since then, allegations of questionable police tactics and a rush to judgment have swirled, and the Minnesota lawmaker has been asked repeatedly about the case. In a statement, Klobuchar also says she's calling for an independent investigation and review of the case. When we come back, the driver lucky to be alive after turning right into an oncoming train. And where are these children? Their mother, finally extradited from Hawaii, is now set to hear that question from an Idaho judge. And Harvey Weinstein behind bars at New York Rikers Island. What we're learning about a medical procedure that delayed his arrival.
ABC News, straightforward.
The Idaho mother, whose children have been missing since September, is being extradited back to her home state of Idaho. Lori Vallow was arrested in Hawaii last month. She faces several charges, including 2 felonies related to the disappearance of her 2 children. But her husband has hinted the kids are safe. ABC's Marcus Moore has the latest.
The FBI today releasing new images of missing Idaho kids Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow. One image showing 17-year-old Tylee hoisting her little brother JJ. Another showing their mother Lori smiling. Authorities say they were captured September 8th at Yellowstone National Park. Investigators believe Tylee hasn't been seen since. And JJ last seen on a home security camera playing in a neighbor's yard in late September. Lori Vallow under a cloud of suspicion surrounding her children's disappearances. Spotted today on an airport tarmac as she was being extradited from Hawaii to Idaho. Authorities say she and her current husband, Chad Daybell, retreated to Hawaii, where they've remained silent.
Hey, Mr. Daybell, are the kids okay? No comment.
Daybell later telling ABC News, quote, "The kids are safe. It is all relatives of the missing children are hoping for."
There is somebody here that knows where those kids are.
And Marcus joins me live now with more. Do police have any leads on where these kids might actually be?
Well, Diane, if they do, they are not saying publicly. So at this point, we don't know what investigators may know about their location at this point. But they have since put out a call for anyone who has pictures of the family together in Yellowstone National Park, if they got them on video cameras or with snapshot cameras, that they turn those pictures and videos over to authorities as they try to search for them. But I've got to tell you that detail from Yellowstone National Park could be key in terms of figuring out exactly the timeline of where Tylee and JJ were seen when they disappeared.
All right, Marcus Moore for us. Such a bizarre case. Thanks, Marcus. And we still have a lot to get to on ABC News Live, including an update on the search for the victims of those devastating tornadoes in the Nashville area. And we'll take a closer look at the recent plunges on Wall Street. But first, our tweet of the day, the niece of Kamala Harris remembering how many women ran for president in 2020.
ABC News, straightforward.
you're getting whiplash from the stock market this week, we don't blame you. Let's parse this out by the numbers. The Dow closed down 969 points today on uncertainty about the impact of coronavirus on the economy. Now, all three major stock indexes were down more than 3% for the day. The markets also took a dive, a staggering 3,583 points last week as fears about COVID-19 took hold. This week, after rallying nearly 13 points on Monday, the markets have seesawed, dropping 785 on Tuesday before rallying nearly 1,200 points yesterday on what some called the Biden bounce. The theory being that Joe Biden's Super Tuesday comeback calmed market concerns about a potential Bernie Sanders nomination. But those gains nearly disappeared today, with traders not moved by the Senate passage of an $8.3 billion emergency funding bill to help combat the spread of COVID-19 in the U.S. The biggest driver of the wild swing seems to be uncertainty over how the virus will impact the economy in the days and months ahead, with restricted movement and travel potentially slowing consumer spending and slowed manufacturing in China and South Korea, hitting U.S. businesses. And as more coronavirus cases emerge across the U.S., that volatility may just be getting started. And we have more stories coming up tonight, including Prince Harry and Meghan Markle back on duty in the UK. How were they received? And remember this guy with the viral sign that raised millions? We'll look at why he was canceled and what happened next. But first, here are some trending headlines on abcnews.com.
ABC News, straightforward. ABC News, straightforward.
Cases of the coronavirus in the U.S. climbing again today on both coasts, and another death, this time reported in Washington state.
This is not the time to give up. This is a time for pulling out all the stops.
The Senate this afternoon approving an $8.3 billion funding bill to combat the COVID-19 virus.
The bill is passed.
A cruise ship off the coast of San Francisco is being held, and passengers are being tested before it can dock in the city.
Once we have results from the tests, the CDC and the state will determine the most appropriate location for the ship to berth.
And striking images coming out of Saudi Arabia, the Grand Mosque closed for cleaning of the novel coronavirus.
Senator Elizabeth Warren made it official today outside her home in Massachusetts.
I announced this morning that I am suspending my campaign for president.
Warren's Super Tuesday hopes dashed as she even lost her home state to former Vice President Joe Biden and Senator Bernie Sanders.
I know that today is a very difficult day for Senator Warren, for her staff, and for her millions of supporters.
Warren says she is taking time to decide who, if anyone, she will endorse. Steve Bloss is on Wall Street.
We've seen this incredible volatility in the face of all of the uncertainty around the coronavirus.
The Dow losing more than 960 points. Uncertainty over the coronavirus driving the plunge.
When you talk about battling this coronavirus right here in the U.S., let alone worldwide, it's expensive. The bulk of that, testing.
Lori Vallow now back in Idaho to face multiple charges connected to the disappearance of two of her children.
He's not with family. Who has him?
Extraditing her to Idaho, where she's expected to face a judge Friday.
Welcome back. Disgraced movie mogul Harvey Weinstein has been moved to Rikers Island after having a procedure last night to put a stent in his heart. Weinstein was convicted of sexual assault and rape last month, but was diverted to New York's Bellevue Hospital after complaining of chest pains. Stunning video from Los Angeles shows a car completely crushed by an oncoming train. Miraculously, the driver survived with only minor injuries. The LAPD tweeted out this video with a reminder to pay attention near train tracks and always obey traffic signals. And Harry and Meghan are back in the UK. The Duchess arrived from Canada to join the Prince at an event for wounded warriors in one of their final official appearances. The couple will step down from their royal duties at the end of the month. People in Tennessee are still picking up the pieces after that deadly tornado outbreak. Those storms ripped through the state early Tuesday morning, killing 25 people and destroying hundreds of homes and businesses. But amid the destruction, the community is banding together to rebuild. ABC's Victor Okendo reports on the ground in Nashville.
Tonight in Tennessee, as devastated neighborhoods across the storm zone clean up with the help of an army of volunteers.
We're not called the volunteer state for nothing.
We're hearing the desperate calls to 911 for help.
My wife, she's bleeding extremely bad from the head.
Were you hit by a tornado?
Yeah.
25 people were killed by the tornadoes that struck the Nashville area early Tuesday morning. The one that hit Putnam County was the strongest twister to strike this region in more than a decade. This is what an EF4 tornado can do. Winds of 175 miles per hour shredding this neighborhood. The mayor calling the damage historic. All missing residents now accounted for, but the massive cleanup effort will take weeks, if not months. There are still widespread power outages throughout the region, and the concern for those residents tonight, a cold front is moving in and temperatures will be near freezing. Diane?
Our thanks to Victor Okendo in Nashville. And that storm threat in parts of the south is not over. The storm's currently hanging over the southeast. And these are some images of the damage left behind in Mississippi. And it's not just the storm itself, but also the threat of flooding that's raising concerns. Senior meteorologist Rob Marciano is tracking it all for us. Rob?
Hey, good evening, Diane. We're looking at a complex combination of two storms. This one in the south and a wave dropping out of the north, and they're going to merge into becoming a very powerful cyclone. The one in the southeast, boy, they can't wait to get rid of this one, especially in Georgia, where it's been raining heavily. Still flood watches that'll drop later, but it's raining heavily, and it will continue to do so in the Carolinas, and maybe a severe thunderstorm rolling through Jacksonville as this thing moves off the coast tonight and tomorrow. As it does that, it'll kind of get pulled back in by this low dropping out of the Great Lakes. That will bring snows to the interior northeast. Rain mostly along the coast as the two merge, and winds really start to crank up, especially in eastern New England. I think 40 to 60 mile per hour winds along Cape Cod, and potentially 1 to 4 inches of snow there before this thing rapidly moves out and colder air drops in for nearly everybody on Saturday. Diane?
All right, Rob Marciano for us. Thanks, Rob. Well, the swift hand of social backlash and the harsh spotlight of social media have created a recent trend. In an instant, you can be canceled. It's a fate that comes with personal and financial cost. Some say the canceled deserve it. Others call it cyberbullying. Arcana Whitworth recently sat down with 3 people who were canceled and have been working to bounce back.
I've made a severe and continuous lapse in my judgment.
Raw and emotional.
And that's what this video is here to do, to address it, to say that I am sorry.
I'm disappointed in myself because it seems like I've learned nothing from all these past controversies.
I owe everybody an explanation. These apologies posted on social media.
Be back stronger and a better person and a better friend.
Their alleged wrongs, all different. Their sentence, the same. Cancellation.
Hey guys.
And for those like Carson King, they don't even see it coming.
I am embarrassed and stunned to reflect on what I thought was funny when I was a 16-year-old kid, and I want to sincerely apologize.
Do you remember this sign?
I scribbled out, Busch Light supply needs replenished with my Venmo account. You know, we never thought we'd get on TV or anything.
But people did see him.
By the time we left the game day taping and went back to our tailgate and had phone reception, I had over $1,600 in there.
Carson quickly deciding all that money would go to the children's hospital of his rival school.
Venmo joining the cause, tweeting, we see a lot of great stories, but this is one of our faves.
Venmo and Anheuser-Busch pledging to match donations made to Carson's account, raising over $1 million in a matter of days. Local station KCCI received a call. Carson was about to give a press conference.
I am embarrassed and stunned to reflect on what I thought was funny when I was a 16-year-old kid, and I want to sincerely apologize.
The Des Moines Register, they were doing an article on me, and I guess one of their background checks they do, a routine thing, is they go through your social media.
The article's author unearthing a pair of racially insensitive tweets from 8 years ago. Carson says they were of him quoting a comedian. Amid outrage, Anheuser-Busch quickly cut ties with Carson.
I can't go back and improve and change what I posted when I was 16 years old, but I can apologize and work to improve myself every day and make a meaningful difference in people's lives.
Carson had fallen into a growing phenomenon called cancel culture. When someone is canceled, that usually amounts to online followers rejecting someone en masse for a perceived wrong. The New York Times once declared, everyone is canceled. We've seen it from actors to comedians.
I'm sorry if these words hurt. I'm sorry.
If I tweet or hashtag about how you didn't do something right, man, you see how woke I was? I called you out. That's not activism.
My mentality is not discretionary. It could be one of the biggest A-list celebrities down to the local person that just happened to tweet something inappropriate.
For people that think because cancel culture lives online, that it doesn't have any real life impacts, what do you have to say to that?
That is completely false. It absolutely does have real life implications, especially for the person that is going through it, you know, the person that's canceled.
Beauty vlogger Manny Gutierrez was canceled too.
I had brands that no longer sent me PR, brands that no longer supported me, you know, so many different things that happened, and it was like crazy that a misunderstanding like led to like this.
Known to his fans as Manny MUA, his rise began like so many on YouTube.
I started in my bedroom, on the floor in front of my closet, door locked. So I'm just gonna make a video of how I do my foundation routine. A softbox I bought from Amazon with my tip money that I would make from when I was a waiter, and my mom's camera.
The more Manny uploaded, the more people subscribed, enamored not only by his makeup tips and reviews, but by his openness.
I had been wanting to make this video for such a long time. I have vitiligo. I have my little brother here. Okay, this is hard, bro. Like, this is...
We knew he was different. Like I said in the beginning, I wasn't always supportive of the LGBT community.
It does get better and it does get easier for those who feel like they're in a rut.
In 2017, Manny became the first man to star in a Maybelline commercial and the only man that year on People's Most Beautiful list, and then in Forbes 30 Under 30 for 2018. Later, forming his own makeup company, Lunar Beauty.
And so, at the peak, how many followers?
Oh my gosh, like I think it was 5 million.
What?
Yeah, it was 5 million.
Is it on?
It's rolling.
Friends with other social media makeup stars. And all it took was this simple picture of a group on a night out and a cryptic caption to ignite an all-out beauty community feud. Accused of being a social climber, the incident was given a name: Dramageddon. Fans chose sides, digging up unsavory social media posts of those in that picture, and people started unfollowing.
And so when your online life and business and passion started to come crashing down a little bit, what was that like?
Oh my gosh, I felt like the end of the world. It truly felt like I was like just not gonna make it. It was like the weirdest feeling because you work for years and years and years and you work so hard to accomplish these goals that you have, and you create them and you make it happen. And you know, one thing can bring you down so fast and so quickly, and you can plummet so much faster than you can rise.
And that's how the snowball starts rolling. One person leads to 10, leads to 10,000. So if we were all standing in a room together, most likely most of these people would not be treating the canceled person in this manner.
Losing hundreds of thousands of followers, potentially meaning hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost revenue, Manny was also receiving unsettling messages.
It seemed like a lot of your followers may have been afraid to support you publicly because of what they deemed this mob mentality against you, and this vitriol online was really getting out of control.
Absolutely. I was getting thousands of messages a day saying like how evil I was and how I'm a terrible person and how I should go kill myself, and all these crazy, crazy messages based off of like one situation that happened, and I have no idea what's actually going on behind closed doors. They just know like what was shown in one moment. But you know, the mob mentality is so manic and so crazy, and it was because people that I thought were my followers and cared for me were turning against me and being like, oh, like you're not who I thought you were. And then it makes you think like, maybe I do suck.
For me, it's like, you know, jaywalking, and I received the death penalty for jaywalking.
An all too familiar feeling for Natasha Tynes, the communications specialist who was working on a novel.
Oh my God! I was really excited.
Mere weeks before the book was about to be released, something she did during her morning commute on the DC Metro changed everything.
While on the train, I saw one of the DC Metro employees in uniform eating a meal.
Natasha ignited a firestorm after she snapped a photo of a black DC Metro worker minding her business and eating on the train, which is against Metro rules, and tweeted it to the worker's employer, saying this is unacceptable. She says after people online suggested she delete the tweet, she did. It had been up for less than an hour.
But someone took a screenshot of it. My phone just melted. I received death threats. They made fun of the way I look. They called me fat. They called me, you know, the B word. They made fun of my children. They called me a bad mother. They made fun of my husband.
8 months later, the trauma clearly still fresh for Natasha. It wasn't long before her publisher canceled their agreement.
I had a complete nervous breakdown, and I had to be hospitalized that day. Now I get how some people kill themselves over cyberbullying.
What happened to Natasha online was upending not just her life, but her family too.
I mean, even like the Google results, when you Google my name, you know, that's the first thing that pops up. That should not define me.
She says part of forgiving herself meant talking to DC Metro to make sure nothing would happen to that employee she tweeted about.
I sent them a DM via Twitter, and I told them I'd like to talk to someone. I made an error in judgment by posting that tweet online, and they thanked me and they assured me over the phone that nothing is going to happen to the woman in terms of her job security.
Natasha says another company has agreed to publish her book. For Manny, recovering from cancellation meant taking a social media timeout.
While you are an online personality, you are a real person going through something very real.
I left social media for 2 months, and I didn't log on, I didn't check it, I deleted the apps off my phone, and I just really needed my own like personal break. I went to therapy for 6 months after, just to really, you know, strengthen up myself. Because I feel like, you know, when you think about it, when you're going through this online drama, it's happening online and it sucks and it's crazy, but like you're not dying. You know, you're not like, there's so much worse things in the world, and I was having a hard time putting my life in perspective at the time.
Having built himself back up, Manny was ready to rebuild his following too.
Where's Mom? I remember, Mom, come on.
This is where you learn.
Yes, this is where I get it.
So what does it mean for you to see this dream come to life like that?
You know, I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud of the brand. I'm very proud of his hard work, that he puts his heart and soul into everything, but I'm more proud of him.
His mom, dad, and brother, a key part of the business, releasing new products.
Right, like, so I love, like, this was like my Greek goddess collection, my Moonspell palette, Paige, Phoebe, Prue, Piper from Charmed. And my mom worked on all of it with me.
That passion still alive.
Do you feel that because you went through this, that you're sort of stripped down almost and more vulnerable to your followers, and that they might actually know a more real version of yourself now after this?
You know, when you go through something like this, it just like breaks you in your own way, and you're kind of like new skin all over again. And so I think it's more so I've learned different lessons that I went through this, and like I still am very guarded in my own way. Like I'm still very like, in real life, I'm guarded, like when it comes to things, because I don't want to get hurt again like I was before. But when it comes to my online presence, I feel like I'm a lot happier. I feel like I'm a lot more open with my following because like they've seen me at my most raw. That is why I'm even making this, for my people that are still with me, riding or dying for me.
For Carson, reckoning with his own cancellation and apology, he wondered, how would people respond?
I think in the end of it, most people realized, yeah, he was a kid. He was 16. He's not a public figure.
Local businesses pledged to donate too. An ice cream parlor creating a Busch Light flavor in his honor. But not everyone came out unscathed. Remember that article from the Des Moines Register? Carson's supporters also did some digging.
They dug through, you know, the reporter's tweets, and he had a lot of unsavory tweets from his past that were a lot more recent than mine.
The Register was forced to defend its editorial practices, later firing that article's author for his own offensive tweets. The author later told BuzzFeed the tweets were, frankly, embarrassing, adding, "This event basically set my life on fire."
I mean, I didn't think we'd get anything to start with, so 3 million is pretty cool.
One funny sign, one man with a great heart.
Carson now devoting all his time to fundraising while cautioning kids to watch what they post online.
There is no question that these people that have been canceled by social media have done something wrong. They have harmed either an individual or a group of individuals, and we cannot condone that behavior. But the aftermath of being canceled can also ruin these people's lives.
Cancellation, a harsh sentence for some, a timeout for others, and whether an accidental celebrity or someone whose livelihood is dependent on followers, perhaps all anyone can do is log off and wait.
Remember that you're talking to a real human on the other side of it.
And being human, you grow and you learn, and your mindsets change and all kinds of different things.
Everyone makes mistakes.
We're all humans, we all bleed red. You know, it's not that I'm a terrible human because I made a mistake. It's because I am human that I made a mistake.
In Los Angeles, Kana Whitworth, ABC News Live.
Our thanks to Kana for that report. When we come back, amid the coronavirus concerns, you probably know now to wash your hands frequently, but do you know how to wash your hands? We've got some special tips to make sure you're following medical guidelines. Our musically inspired office survey is next. A recent study in a medical journal found only 5% of adults wash their hands properly. So with the heightened concerns surrounding the coronavirus, we thought we would offer you some guidance and some musical motivation. With all the added attention given to personal hygiene, there's a tried and true method that public health officials and medical experts recommend.
Hand washing with soap and water is the gold standard. So again, when you do that, at least 20 seconds. When you're done, you guys, make sure you grab a paper towel to turn the faucet off with. Otherwise, you've just undone all your good work.
But short of setting a timer, how do you ensure a full 20-second scrub down? We caught up with some of the ABC News Live team to check in on their hand washing habits.
Before the outbreak, I would probably take 15 seconds instead of a full 20 because who's counting?
Sometimes I use more of the soap than I need.
And do you have a song that you like to sing when you do this?
Happy birthday.
If you're like Tom and don't want to be stuck singing 2 rounds of Happy Birthday, the LA Times offers some alternative tunes, like the chorus of Prince's 1985 classic, Raspberry Beret. The chorus to Beyonce's Love on Top is exactly 20 seconds. And then there's Fleetwood Mac's Landslide.
Well, I've been afraid of changing 'cause I built my life around you.
Too emotional? How about Toto's epic sing-along? Whichever earworm you choose, just remember, keep scrubbing for 20 seconds.
Fresh photos with the bar lighting. New man on the Minnesota Vikings. True hurts needed something more exciting.
And if the song's good, a little extra scrubbing can't hurt. I think our staff has a little too much fun washing our hands around here. But there you go. New tips, news you can use. Shifting gears now to a note on a passing tonight. The inspiration for an American icon, Rosie the Riveter, was a powerful symbol of feminism when women took to factories and assembly lines during World War II. Well, now the original Rosie has just died at the age of 95 in New York City. Rosalind P. Walter grew up in a wealthy home, but like millions of women in the early 1940s, she joined the war effort, working the night shift driving rivets into fighter planes, an act of selflessness that turned into a symbol of strength for generations to come. And before we go tonight, the image of the day. As we mentioned before, Elizabeth Warren dropped out of the race, and with that, her dog Bailey was officially done being a good boy. As you can see, there's Bailey chewing on someone's burrito.
Bailey, stole it.
Bailey is done behaving. He deserves it. And that's our show for this hour. Stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Diane Macedo. Thanks for streaming with us.